Hello, everyone, and welcome back in. This is our week 2 of our TommyJon seed demonstration videos. I'm here with my dad, John.
Hey there.
And this week we are going to be doing a lesson on potting up plants that have germinated. Last time we showed you a little bit about how to germinate them in the best conditions using vermiculite and paper plates. And this time we're actually going to show you how to pot them up. But before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of the outreach you guys have been doing. I've now received over 40 orders of seeds, and my dad and I have been working on packing them up in over 20 states. So we are starting a real garden army, and we are building this grassroots movement. And recently we've been thinking about it a lot. Right now, there's too few people growing too much food for too many people. In other words, you might be able to say it better than I can, Dad. What do you think?
Well, in mathematics, we talk. I am a retired math professor, so when Tommy started talking about distribution, and I naturally thought of the distributed property, but there is sort of this idea of that getting perhaps many people involved in agriculture and on a very reasonable scale, even very small scale, gardening at home can be satisfying, rewarding, and necessary in so many ways. And so we just, we've done it before in the United States with the Victory Garden program, and we're very interested in encouraging folks and to find out what folks think about growing your own in your own yard. And many of you know a lot about growing. Many of you need to learn.
Yep.
We're all in this together. Tommy and I are learning all the time. We don't do everything right, but we try.
Yeah.
But yeah, so part of the idea is getting smaller plots distributed among many folks with the diversity of crops, and being able to grow things that you can just pick and eat right from your yard, and that are perhaps suited to your local conditions, and don't need the transportation to get the food.
Yeah, the basic idea I think we've been talking about a lot is if you need a tractor or you need some sort of heavy machinery, then you're doing too much in terms of farming. That means that one person is taking on the load for too many of us. I just heard last week that a farmer in Idaho had to dump 1 million pounds of onions. And
I have a friend. She wants to help.
Yeah, that's our kitty cat Stephen's Hawking. But anyway, if farmers were growing lesser amounts of food and sharing it amongst just their neighbors, we could really create a beautiful patchwork of a foodscape, if you will, in our neighborhoods, and that's what we're trying to start up here. But anyway, now we'll jump into our tutorial after that little soapbox speech. And please keep spreading the word, though, because we have plenty more seeds to send out and plenty more advice to give. I think that the future of food is local, so everyone, please join in. So, as you can see here, we've got some of what we will use as pots. We like to reuse regular household items if we can. So we've got a plastic container there. It used to be cottage cheese, some bean cans here. And my dad is going to drill some holes in the bottom of these.
Yeah.
If you want to get that going, Dad.
Yeah. So this is kind of funny here. You may just hear the noise for a minute, but we'll see what we can do here.
While he's doing that, we wanted to give the full experience. So, but while he's doing that, I'll show some of the progress on our plants over here this week. You can see our tomatoes there. And then up here, more tomatoes. We put out all of our brassicas today out into the cold frame. That's something we'll talk about more. So while my dad drills a couple more things. You can use any sort of container like this as your pots. You can also get pots at a grocery store or at your local hardware store. There's some pots like this. We particularly like these. These are all natural pots, and they will actually they're completely organic material, which is really what we like about them.
They're called peat pots.
Peat pots.
P-E-A-T.
Yep, seed starter pots there. These are great, but yeah, we like to not throw out as much as we can, so we reuse everything here. So, what's important
the holes
when considering what is the best pot to use? There's some really small, teeny pots, and those are good for short-term storage of your plants. But if you're gonna keep your plant in the plant hotel, like we've got back here, if it's gonna have a long stay in the plant hotel, then you're gonna want to give it a bigger pot, more like this, or even something like this, much bigger pot there.
And a lot of that depends on, it's your timing, where you live, and you can certainly find a lot of information about, for example, frost-free dates. Here in Iowa, we're looking at somewhere May 15th, something like that, to be sure we're past a frost that can hurt your more tender plants like tomatoes. Other plants can tolerate frost. So, and one thing we can tell you right off the bat is things like broccoli, cauliflower, what we call the brassica family, broccoli, cauliflower, help me out here, Tommy, cabbage,
Brussels sprouts,
mustard,
kale, all brassicas. It's
arugula.
And interestingly enough, those brassicas, they all started out just as what's called wild mustard, which you can still find as a weed. And they've been cultivated into all these different plants that you would never really associate. Brussels sprouts,
collards,
kale,
even collards,
broccoli. And just they've been selected for different characteristics in different places throughout time. And now we've got all these different delicious foods to eat.
They can be so cold hardy that they overwinter in many places, survive the winter, and come back strong in the spring. We've seen that even here in Iowa. So what we'll do, I think we'll start with actually the cottage cheese container, and one of our Tommy's going to put some of our potting mix in there.
So for soil here, you can you got a few options. What we're using is actually store-bought potting soil, but you can just use soil from a very fertile place. Under your deck is a good place to look for some soil. They say you want to bake it though before you actually use it as potting soil, correct?
You can when using just totally compost or totally natural things for starting seedlings at this phase. There can be difficulty with things like damping off and that kind of thing. So it's somewhat experimental.
Now damping off can happen when there's too much moisture, basically.
Yes,
and that can. In normal soil, if it's not store-bought potting soil, it can be more cakey, and the moisture is not going to drain as well. So that will make your seedlings more likely to damp off.
Yeah. So you can purchase also organic potting mixes, and you don't need a whole lot really to start off. But we've got our container pretty well filled up. One nice thing for y'all to see is that from the last lesson, continuing, so to speak, lesson. I'm a professor and retired again, so sometimes I use words like lesson, but part of the idea from last time was starting those seeds in vermiculite, and so we can see kind of part of the result here. We've got the plants. These are actually ninja peppers. These are hot peppers.
No, these are bell peppers.
Oh, I'm sorry. These are actually sweet peppers. So what we're going to do, we're going to give them a little bit of a misting.
Yep,
and kind of loosen things up.
And so you know that they're ready to pot when you start to see some green leaves here. And for instance, you know that these are some cucumbers over here. We have these. These have started to send roots, you can see, but there's no green yet. So you would not want to pot those yet. My dad has given them another squirt to moisten them up. They'll probably be ready in a couple days, though. They're well underway in germination, but not quite ready to go in a pot.
So Tommy, if you'll hand me the pencil over there.
Yep.
And what we're gonna do is take a pencil or something like that, and we're going to kind of tease him out of here. We want to be nice and gentle.
Yeah, you're dealing with like a baby there.
Yeah, and we can set him down and even give him a little, just real gentle, little squirt there. And then we'll take our container, and you could do this beforehand too, but we're making a hole.
Just about the width of your pencil there. You want it to be a little wider than the roots.
And I kind of take the pencil and wiggle it around a little deep there. And so what we're going to do, a little bit counterintuitive, but we're going to actually sink for many of our plants, pretty much most anything we're potting, we're going to sink that stem down in there. And I hope this is showing up, but
let's get it a little closer.
Let Tommy work on that. We're kind of using the pencil and just gently nudging him down into the hole so that, we're going to let a little stem protrude, but not very much. Plants grown indoors, it's very easy for them to get what we call it leggy. They'll grow very tall but kind of spindly and not be very strong. And one way to encourage them to be a little stouter, one way is to have the light as close as possible to them, and also another is to do what we're doing here to kind of sink them a bit. I'm giving him a little drink of water now.
Yeah, so you can see that legginess shows up even in the vermiculite plants. That's another seedling right there. And that happens because the plants are looking for light. And, I've often heard people say that plants are kind of like solar panels, but in reality, solar panels are kind of like plants, I think. And the idea with both, solar panels are modeled off of plants, and that they can take that energy from the sun and turn it into something that we can use as humans. We couldn't live without plants. Plants are the only thing. Plants are what fossil fuels are made of, just millions of years of degrading and decomposing. And so plants and the ability to capture light like they do is the most magnificent energy capture in the entire universe. So
well said. Yep.
Marvelous little machines we've got here.
All right, so you're going to do a little pressing now. So part of planting is literally kind of planting the plant with take your fingers and press around that hole you made. You want to kind of close in that hole a little bit.
I'll work on one over here too, and then, we'll just do two for this video.
Part of the reason, by the way, for the holes in the bottom of the container is to prevent sogginess. Ideally you're watering and there's not going to be a whole lot or any drip out of the bottom, but it happens now and then. We overwater a little bit or it just gets soggy, and ventilation and drip and a little drip out the bottom and just keeps things from getting too soggy where your plants are going to suffer. So we do put holes in the bottom, and those of you who are concerned about
that one doesn't have holes in it.
Oh, where's the one I drilled? Let's see. We'll find it. Yeah, we've got. I think I was using it to. But at any rate, we have our shelves over here where we don't have a whole lot of concern about drippage or seepage from the bottom because there isn't a whole lot. First of all, and secondly, it's kind of set up to catch it, and it's fine. But many of you are going to be in a situation where you're going to put this plant down somewhere, and you don't want any water out of the bottom, and that's very understandable. You don't want to ruin furniture, things like that. So you can get yourself some kind of plate or tray or something to put underneath to prevent that if that is of a concern to you.
See the little holes in the bottom there you drilled? You just want to have a few drainage holes, and then that will help prevent the damping off of the plants. And you just want to keep them pretty moist all the time. You'll be able to tell if they're too dry. That they won't look happy, and the soil will just look kind of brownish and sticky. And you'll know it's not a good place for your plants to be grown.
The plants, sometimes, we all get busy, and sometimes you'll have it watered so much, and of course the plants will communicate with you, and they'll show you. They'll actually look thirsty. They'll start to wilt, of course. And I think everybody knows that. And they'll start to show signs of stress, and so they will communicate with you too. And
so you can tell my dad and I have been spending a lot of time with plants recently. We started to talk to them, but we're gonna wrap this video up here. We're just gonna put these underneath the grow lights, and then bid you farewell until next week. We hope these tutorials are useful for you.
Another thing we'll be doing before we probably won't include it on the video, but you can take some masking tape or something like that, and it's a very good idea to label. It's really important actually to label what have you just potted. What is the plant, and a date is a good thing too.
Yeah, unless you like mystery plants, those are kind of fun too.
That can be fun.
Okay, well, thank you all so much, and take care. We'll be back for our next lesson next week, which will have to do with hardening off and transplanting. So that's going to be a lot of fun. That'll be our first lesson outside. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.